Well, here we go, everybody. Welcome to the first episode of the Bass Commissioners. It's been a long time coming. There is certainly a need for it. We have this excellent sport of competitive bass fishing, and we have organizations that run the sport, but there is no unification. If these organizations work together to support the best interest of all anglers, not just their anglers, but all tournament fishermen and women, that'd be one thing. But time and time again, we see examples of how these organizations refuse to even acknowledge that the other guys even exist. We've got a nation that is split between this organization and that organization. It's not politics, everybody. It's bass fishing. But still, it has become one of those things that we literally cannot discuss at the dinner table. About the only time that the big organizations acknowledge that the other organizations exist is when it comes to watching each other's payout. These organizations are very careful about watching the payouts from all the other organizations. They want to make sure that one side isn't paying the winners of these events more than they're paying. So it's always been interesting to me that while these organizations literally refuse to acknowledge the other side exists, they're very careful to watch the payouts because they don't want that organization to pay out more than their organization does. It's one of the reasons why winning a BASS event or a FLW event back in 2005 paid $100,000 to first place. And today, we pay $100,000 to first place. Anyway, it is time for a unification to take place, and the Bass Commissioners are here to do just that. I'm Keith Neiswanger, and my co-host is Patrick Schaefer, just a couple of ham and eggers who love the sport and want to see it become the best it can be. We're going to tackle the hard issues in bass fishing, and when necessary, we will produce binding rulings as only commissioners can, which the organizations will likely ignore. Do you have a comment? Do you have a question? Is there something in the world of bass fishing that you'd like us to investigate? Shoot us a DM on Instagram, comment on this video, let us know, and we'll start investigating. Well, let's get this party started. Here is Patrick Schaefer. Patrick, why don't you start us off tonight with topic number one?
All right, so our first topic is about the professional bass tour schedules, and should organizations be forced to work together on tour dates? So I definitely think something needs to be done. Something's got to change. I mean, the thing that's it's hurting the fans more than anything else, you know.
Do you find yourself on Sunday mornings when there's an elite event going on and a BPT event going on? Do you have two monitors on your computer, or what do you do?
Honestly, I just look at which one's doing the best and which one's more. I say doing the best, but has, I guess, more drama.
Okay.
And for me, I don't know how it's going to be now, but for me, it's always been MLF because even the cut line is dramatic. So, hey, this guy may have caught a bunch of fish, but is this guy going to make it in the top 20? Is this guy, okay, this guy just caught a fish, and now this guy's out. Well, now this guy caught a fish, and he jumped up 5 places. So for me, it ended up being MLF a lot because there was more entertainment, whereas if I was kind of watching the Bass Tracker on Bassmaster, I could kind of see where people were at and about what they were going to come in. I'm like, okay, well, it looks like this guy's probably going to win. And then, so I usually had both going, but I was usually really, like, I might have Bass Tracker on my phone or on one of the other screens, but I was usually watching MLF or vice versa. I mean, every once in a while went the other way, but.
Yeah, what it occurs to me is, I've been thinking about this is a compelling question, and it occurs to me that if Major League Baseball on a Sunday is going to have something like 15 games going, maybe they're not all going at the same time, but they're professional football on a Sunday has multiple games going, and we have to decide. I don't know about you, but on Football Sunday, I'm watching the Red Zone channel. That's the one that's got all the games going, and I'm just watching highlights. When I think about my bass fishing, now I do have a computer set up with multiple screens, and so I do have them both up when I'm watching. But it's tiresome and it's frustrating, and I can't imagine that that the sponsors of these events, like the idea that people's attention is being split. I mean, you've got crazy ravenous fans like yourself and myself, and we're gonna watch. Heck, if the bass club, if our local bass club was on and it was being televised or live streamed, I guess is the right term, I probably would watch it. But when there are conflicting tour dates, I agree. My attention is going to be diverted. Now, if I am a company that pays money to BASS, and a company that pays money to Major League Fishing, I guess I'm getting bang for my buck on both sides, but it would be a little frustrating, I think, to have things split. I was looking at the schedule, and we've got this next season. We've got, really, I was surprised. There's only one open event that directly conflicts with the Toyota Series event. I thought there would be more, and I was, I guess, pleasantly surprised. But, I mean, if you're an angler who's trying to make it in the sport, you got to fish all 9 opens. If you're trying to make the invitationals for next season in Major League Fishing, you got to fish all 3 of the events that are in your whatever zone you're in. You're trying to qualify. So right away, there's going to be anglers that can't do both, and it almost feels like the organizations want that to happen. It almost feels to me like the organizations want anglers to have to make a decision, and I don't know, let these people fish. They want to fish. They're crazy enough to get out there and do this. Let them do it.
Right.
Let them do it. Now, I also looked at... Oh, go ahead. I was going
to say, sorry, but you kind of made a comment earlier. Like, for me, though, too, if, like, I'm a fan, for, like, football, I'm a Steelers fan.
Okay.
And in baseball, I'm an Astros fan. So, if the Steelers are playing, I watch the Steelers. And then if the Steelers aren't playing, then I'm like you. I kind of have the Red Zone channel on or whatever. Or if the baseball, I watch the Astros. Or then maybe I'll watch MLB and just keep an eye highlights everything else that's going on. But in bass fishing, I'm not really just a fan of one guy. I'm a fan of several anglers, and I like to watch all of them. So in that comparison, I mean, yeah, there might be 10 baseball games going on in one day, but I'm really focused on one game. Whereas in fishing, I like to watch all these guys, and you're making me choose which one that I want to watch.
Right.
And I understand there's some people out there that are diehard bass, and they're mad and they're never going to watch MLF or anything like that. That's whatever. But most people that I know that bass fish, that like bass fishing, they'll watch any of it. They don't really care whether they fish for MLF, whether they fish for bass. So don't force me to choose, because you could get me viewing both. If you would, hey, bass is going to fish this weekend, MLF is going to fish the next weekend, well, you're going to get me to view both of them.
Right.
Because this weekend I'm going to watch this one, and the next weekend I'm going to watch that one or listen to it. I mean, sometimes I'm driving or I'm busy, but I'll just plug it in my phone and put my AirPods in, and I'll listen to it. I'll listen to live. Even though I can't see it, I can still listen.
I've done that as well. It's interesting because you're talking about it from a fan standpoint, and I'm certainly a fan, but I also am thinking about these anglers who desperately want to make it to the next level. And like, for example, you know, right off the bat, when you got an open that you have to fish all 9 of those opens, conflicting with a Toyota Series event, well, that's going to eliminate those anglers that need to fish all 3 of those Toyota Series events. And it's going to also eliminate those anglers that need to fish all 9 of those open events. It only happens once on the schedule. I've got it kind of set up over here on my other monitor. And it looks like there's only one time that happens. But still, it shouldn't have to happen. Now, there are there are 46 events. If I'm looking at Opens, Elite Series, I'm looking at BPTs, I'm looking at invitationals, and I'm looking at Toyota Series events. To me, those are the ones that are kind of in conflict. We got 46 of those. That's a lot of events. But you know what? We still got 52 months in a year. I'm sorry, 52 weeks in a year. 52 months.
I know what you meant.
And well, so it's hard for me to believe that California could actually be on the progressive end of this. But in California, if you want to get a tournament, if you want to get a permit for a tournament on a lake, you've got to go to this jamboree that they have. I believe they still have it. At least they used to. And all the organizations that wanted to host tournaments, mainly these were team tournaments, but they had like a draft of some kind, and then you got to pick the weekends that you held your tournaments. Why can't the professional tournament organizations get together and do this? Why can't they do that?
Right.
You know, you can pick, somebody goes first, somebody goes second, and then they can go back up the ladder that way. I know that we like to have our professional seasons over by the end of the summer, but you know, you and I got to fish in the fall. How come not those guys?
Right. No, and actually, I agree. I think there needs to be at least a tournament in the fall. If the fishing's tough, I understand how it can lose viewership and not be as entertaining. I understand that. But if you're trying to say these are the best anglers in the world, which I'm not saying they aren't, but there ought to be at least one tournament in the fall where they're having to hit, hey, this is the fall transition, and then me as a fan, I can learn from their techniques that might help me do a little bit better when I go out and go fishing in the fall.
Do you could say COVID was terrible, but the 2020 year was cool from the standpoint that we had all those events pushed to the fall, and it was fun to watch those guys figure that out, because that is a tough time of the year to catch fish.
Right. No, I agree. And I just think it showcases more of the sport if you make those guys fish at least one tournament in the fall. And like you said, it could be no different than a fantasy football draft. All right, hey guys, here's the weekends that we've got that we're going to have tournaments. We've talked to these towns, these cities, these lakes are willing to host tournaments. All right, hey, Bass, you get first pick. Where do you want to go in February? Let them pick.
Right.
And then, all right, MLF, you're next. And then, all right, so the next month we're going to have a tournament in March. All right, who's picking? Then,
Absolutely.
It just, and they're not overlapping each other. If guys want to fish both leagues, or you're trying to promote bass fishing and these guys are doing everything they can just to make it, or they're trying to fish the opens and they're trying to qualify for bass, or they're trying to qualify for MLF. Give them the chance to fish both tours if they want to, so that they have a chance to qualify for either one. I get it. You want them to come to bass, but these guys don't care. It's no different than, or most of them don't, as long as the money's good and the payout's good. It's kind of like the guy going to the NFL draft. He may be growing up as a kid, might be the New England Patriots fan, but if the Miami Dolphins call him and say, hey, we're giving you a contract, he's not going to be like, no, sorry, you're not the Patriots. I'm going to hold off and wait. They all take it. So give these guys a chance.
So it seems like we got kind of two issues in one here. First of all, we've got the highest tours, the BPT and the BASS Elite Series. There's one guy who's trying to do both this year. Come on. My name, yeah, Keith Poche, trying to do both. As it turns out, the rules of both organizations, there's the wording is so. It requires that he's going to have to make a decision. And
right.
I had him on the show on the Bass to Anglers podcast several weeks ago, and he's going to try to finagle it one way. He's going to try to fish some opens so that he can win one and make the classic. But in the old days, we had a lot of guys that would fish the FLW Tour and the BASS Tour.
Right.
As a fan, that's what I really loved. And then what we have is the guys that are trying to get to those higher echelons of the sport via the Opens or via the Toyota Series, and we're making those guys decide. So we've got angler issues, I think, on the lower end, and we've got fan issues on the upper end. I'm gonna suggest a ruling right here. This could be our first Bass Commissioners ruling. It'll be binding. It'll be something that the leagues will probably just ignore. But we should have it out there anyway. We should put it out there anyway. My resolution is that the tournament organizations must meet at some point during the year to plan next season's tour schedule. The qualification events, whether it's the BASS Opens, the Toyota Series, and even the Invitational's got to fit in there somewhere, because there's some conflicts with Invitationals and Opens also. And then for the fans, that we got to get that. So I'm going to suggest, and it just takes your vote, because there's only two commissioners here. I'm going to suggest that the tournament organizations be compelled to meet in the same room to plan out their schedule for both the up-and-coming anglers and for the fans. What say you?
I agree.
Boy, we've got our first ruling already in the first, 15 minutes into this? So it is resolved that the tournament organizations must meet to plan their schedules for the future.
And if, like the Classic and the Red Crest, hey, in 2023, Bass, you get to pick your date for the Classic first. 2024, MLF, you get to pick your date first. So
they're a week apart.
Make all this stuff work.
Yeah, they're a week apart this year. I guarantee they made sure that they didn't conflict. I guarantee.
Right. So let's make it work. It benefits the fans, it benefits the anglers. So I'm not gonna choose a side. I'm not gonna choose Bass, I'm not gonna choose MLS.
No,
so
make it
don't
work.
Try to make me do it.
Get into a room and make it work. Yeah.
So I get it. The Bassmasters Classic is always going to be the classic. And people get upset because MLF says, oh, we are bass fishing. We are this. I expect MLF to talk themselves up, and I expect Bass to talk themselves up. It's no different than Fox talking themselves up, or CBS Sports, or NBC Sports.
That's right.
They all talk about, we are sports, we are this, ESPN's the greatest. I want them to be happy and promote I don't want them to come out here and be like, hey, come look at the Red Crest. It'll be an okay tournament, but come check it out. Promote it. Tell me it's going to be one of the greatest tournaments ever. I don't have a problem with that. The Bassmasters Classic is always going to be the Bassmasters Classic. MLF is not taking anything away from it. The only you get these people that say they are, but that's just a bunch of talking heads just running their mouth. I don't care. I'm going to watch the Classic. I watched the Classic this year. I had it going. I was actually in the middle of working out, watching Jason Christie weighing on stage and jumping up and down, cheering in the middle of the weight room. So, because I was happy to see him win it.
Yeah.
But, like I said, figure it out. Don't make me choose. Get in the room. Like we said, made our ruling. Get in the room. Get a schedule figured out. And we'll go from there. And let us watch it, have fun, and support all organizations and all fishermen. And if this guy decides to leave MLF and go back to Bass, good for him. If vice versa, this guy leaves Bass and goes to MLF, let's just support fishing and support anglers in general and quit worrying about whether they got an MLF. It's kind of like, I look at it almost like AFC versus NFC or American League versus National League. They're all playing the same sport. One's just American League, one's National League. Let's just support fishing. We support baseball. We support football. Let's support fishing.
Okay, well, we have our first ruling. That's good. It's in the record book now. I'm sure nobody will do anything about it, but that's all right. It's on record. We got a lot of people watching tonight. This is pretty exciting. We had no idea how this would turn out, and if you're out there watching, we appreciate it. If you got a question or a comment, type it into the chat. We'd love to hear your comment because it's just us going back and forth. But if you want to add something to this, type it in there. We'd be happy to respond to it. All right, I guess it's to me now. The next issue of the night to talk about. Hope you're ready for this. Live electronics. Live electronics. Should they be legal or illegal in tournaments? Randy's going to be mad about this. I don't know, maybe Randy will join. What do you think?
I don't think you can ban them. I mean, if you're not going to ban...
Well, we're the commissioners of bass fishing. We can do anything. We can ban them if we want. But I'm asking you, do you want to or not?
No.
Okay, you got to give me more than that.
And again, it's a tool. It's a tool in the toolbox. I went out, you and I kind of talked about this last week. I went out in my boat. I'm going to go out in my boat tomorrow, and I promise you, I'm going to drop my live scope in the water, and I'm not going to catch 100 fish. And if I do, it's going to be a celebration. I'm not going to be calling you going, I just caught 100 fish. But it's not making me, it's just another tool that I use to see what's going on, to search for fish, to look for fish. And you hear the argument of, well, you're catching suspended fish that wouldn't be caught before. But then I watch videos of guys driving over the fish with their 2D sonar or their down scan, and they see the fish suspended. They figure out how long it takes their jig head with their swim bait on there to sink to that depth. They cast out there and catch them then. So what they did obviously is a little bit tougher because they had to count how long it was going to take to fall and all that stuff. And I know there's a science to that, but the only difference is I'm casting it out there and I'm able to watch what's going on. But you don't have any problem with me using GPS for all these waypoints that I mark. Because when I grew up, we used to go fish Trinity Bay down in Galveston, and there was a certain spot where we drove, and my stepdad would stand with his fishing rod, and he would look down the eyes, and he would line up with a point, line up with another point, and we would start drifting. And now we have a GPS where we just mark the waypoint and drift right over the top of it. I can scroll over, I can see something on side scan and scroll over to it and mark a waypoint, and then it'll be on my GPS. Even if I passed it a mile ago, by the time I mark the waypoint, it'll show me where it's at. So I have side scan, down scan, 2D, mapping.
How about lake maps? How about that? Have you? I mean, that's incredible.
Right.
I mean, in the old days, if I wanted to use a lake map, I'd have to get my big paper map out, and if the wind was blowing, forget about it. What a joke. So anyway, I tend to feel that the live electronics should be allowed in tournaments. Although I will say that if you look at something like, for example, baseball does not allow aluminum bats in the major leagues. Okay? Hockey. I don't know how many hockey fans we have here, but I'm a hockey fan. Hockey requires that the curve on your stick be a certain radius and not more than that, because too much makes it deadly. So there are examples of where technology has been taken out of sport, and So I wanted to make sure that was part of this discussion. Having said that, I love live electronics. To me, it is. Right. To me, we are fishing for a whole different population of fish than we have ever fished for before. I interview a lot of professional anglers on my podcast that I do, and I'm telling you, because I did this before back in the early 2000s, back when we called it internet radio. It's the same thing as podcast, but we called it internet radio back then. And these guys today know so much more about bass than those pros knew about back then. They know so much more. And I'm convinced that the live electronics plays a big role, because you'll go out one day and you'll get on them and you'll catch them. You watch, Patrick, even you will catch them on live scope one of these days.
Right.
But you still got to go out and find them the next day. And okay, so maybe your live scope helps you find them, but you see that they move. And especially in that spring transitional period, you can learn a lot. And I think anglers today are smarter because they use live scope and because they can track fish movement. It's just a very interesting conversation to me. Now, I think I'm trying to decide whether there are that many people out there that are against live electronics in tournaments, or whether they're just a couple of really loud voices. It's hard for me to tell. I tend to think it's just a couple of really loud voices, because if you look at the technology in the sport, we didn't used to have trolling motors. We used to have to use oars to get around. And, there used to be limitations on horsepower, and now that's removed. To me, if you really are concerned about technology in the sport, that cat was out of the bag a long time ago, and it's here. You're not, I don't think, going to see any tournament organizations say, no, you can't use this, because the Garmins and the Lowrances and the Humminbirds are paying these guys big money to advertise with them. They're not gonna bite the hand that feeds them, nor should they.
Right. Well, and like some of the other complaints I've heard is people, they'll say, he gets on there and he talks about how only reason he won that tournament is because he had live scope. And I'm like, yeah, but he's just trying to sell stuff for his company, which is Garmin or Lowrance or Humminbird, whoever sponsors him. He's trying to help sell a product for them.
He's doing what he's supposed to do.
When the guy says, a NASCAR driver gets up there and says, my Serve Pro Chevrolet helped me get the win. Well, Serve Pro is a restoration company. I assure you they didn't do anything to help you win other than maybe donate some sponsorship dollars.
Absolutely.
But I understand you're just trying to push your product, and that's part of it. So why I don't understand why people get so upset. And that, like the other argument I hear too is, well, I'm just tired of them staring down at their screen. Well, how is them looking at the screen or staring out in front of them any different? I'm not watching what their head's doing anyways. I'm usually watching how they're working their rod, or if they're fishing a top water, I'm watching it work across the top of the water and seeing a blow up or whatever. I'm not watching what their head's doing. I could care less what they're staring at. And so I just don't understand what the difference is between them looking down at a screen or staring straight out in front of them. And maybe I'm weird.
Well, I think what the organizations need to do, if they're concerned, because I tell you what, those smallmouth events up in the second half of the season in the north, those are kind of tough to watch sometimes. They're just tough to watch. I admit that. I do watch them. I understand it's part of the game. But I think if the tournament organizations are concerned about people feeling like it's not watchable, they ought to schedule more events that are not going to be live scope or live electronics events. Put them on the Red River. Put them on the Sabine. I mean, I know we've got some, BASS already does that. But, those are the kind of fisheries, or maybe split them up. And I think the organizations pretty much do that. It's not a live scope event all the time. If you're going to fish Lake Fork in Texas, it's going to be a live scope event. That lake was built for offshore spots. I mean, it was, when they put that together, they intentionally didn't cut down trees. They made it, Lake Fork was a planned lake, and it was planned to have offshore structure and cover, and perfect for live electronics.
Right. Well, and to me, when I just bought my boat, I'm more excited about having the two Raptors on the back than I am about having live scope. Because I can't tell you how many times during the spawn when I've got fish on beds and me and my buddy were out there in our bay boat trying to slowly ease the anchor down in the water and tie it off, and then the wind changes and blows us across the top of the bed and pushes the fish out, and it's like, well, That didn't work.
Well, that's a great example. How come nobody complains about power poles or raptor poles on the backs of these bass boats? Why isn't that an infraction? I mean, that gives that's a tremendous advantage if you've got those on your boat.
I have a Minn Kota on our bay boat, and it's just a tiller handle. So I don't have a switch. I don't have a foot pedal. So when I want to move, I have to turn it on real low, bump it with my leg to steer it. When I need to stop, I have to reach down there, turn it off, make the cast, ease out the anchor. I don't have spot lock. I don't have anything like that. So
spot lock's another thing.
Yeah, like nobody all this, and that's why I don't understand the hang up on just forward-facing sonar.
Yeah.
Like, why is that your only hang-up? I mean, there's so many other tools out there that have changed everything. I mean, I drove over spots in my bay boat, and we just have a GPS because where we fish a lot down on the coast, it's pretty shallow. So really, we're just using the map to look for tracks so that we know where to run cuts and stuff like that. But I've driven over areas, and then I go out there in my bass boat with side-scan sonar, and I'm finding tires down there and marking all these tires. And these spots that I've fished forever, and I didn't even know there were tires there. So you have all this other advancement in technology that nobody's complaining about except forward-facing sonar.
Yeah. Well, listen, this kind of feels, again, like we have a ruling to make here as commissioners. The question being, should live electronics, should forward-facing sonar be legal or illegal in tournaments? I think, I'm just going to throw it out there. I believe that live electronics should be legal in tournaments, and that should be the end of this conversation. What say you?
I agree.
We have two rulings tonight. Two rulings that are now on record for the world of bass fishing. Fortunately, I think this last ruling is kind of already accepted. I don't think the organizations are ever going to ban it.
Right.
But for those
too much
people,
money.
for those people that are so opposed to it, it's a ruling now. The commissioners have spoken. There you go. Woo! All right, we're making some progress. Again,
On that note,
what's that?
I was gonna say I do think it would be cool though to see like a tournament one day where those guys go out with any electronics and just see what happens.
Well, sure, isn't that?
I mean, not like a points event or anything, like almost like just a fun event, just to see like what would they look for. I mean, maybe give them mapping in 2D just so they don't hit a stump or something like that. But what would they look for? And maybe it didn't have to be a tournament. Even if some guys did it on their like a YouTube channel, I'm just curious. Like, what would you go look for if this was all you had?
Well,
almost kind of like going to fish in a pond.
Certainly. But at the professional tournament level, we now have a ruling. I'm sure there will be those that will complain about it, but it's too bad. The commissioners have already ruled on this. And, if you'd like to organize a rowboat tournament, or if somebody would like to organize a rowboat tournament or something like that,
Right.
I suggested the other day that maybe we have an Amish tour somewhere out there that people can join and fish. That can be just rowboats in yarn for fishing line and things like that. Okay. The Amish people are very resourceful. I didn't mean to say anything about it. It's just that they would not use that technology. And
right.
Anyway.
But yeah, for a championship or a points event of any kind, all electronics should be allowed. We made the ruling.
There we go. Excellent. We've got a few people that are watching tonight. I can't really tell how many, but the screen is pretty much filled up. That's pretty exciting. We'd love to know what you guys think about this. If you got a question or comment, type it into the chat. We'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear what you think about this. It's to you now. If you got another a gripe or a point or something you wanna throw out there that we can talk about.
I do, and actually, this is something we could make a ruling on this one too.
Oh boy.
So, what holds more weight?
Ooh.
The Bassmasters Classic or Red Crest win versus an Angler of the Year?
Oh, okay. So we're not comparing Bassmaster Classic to Red Crest.
No, no, no.
No,
We're
because
just saying,
they're both compelling. They're both
right? So
compelling.
like
Ooh, that would make
in
people
bass.
mad. Wouldn't that make people mad if we?
Oh yeah,
Wow.
but like Brandon Polnick won Angler of the Year.
Yeah.
Jason Christie won the Classic. Wheeler won Angler of the Year. Bobby Lane won Red Crest. But which holds more weight? And I say make a ruling. I don't know where I feel like as soon as I convince myself one way, then I convince myself back the other way.
You know, it's such a great conversation because one is a season's body of work. Another one is a tournament work. I mean, now to me, if you really want to get deep into this, and I don't have this right in front of me, I should have this right in front of me, but those guys that have won both Angler of the Year and Bassmaster Classic, Forest Wood Cup, Red Crest. I know there's a handful out there. I believe Jay Ellis is one of those guys that was an Angler of the Year and a Classic winner. Actually, gosh, I know that somebody has done both. I know a couple of anglers have done both. That's a big deal. I want to say Mark Davis maybe has done that. Gosh, I should have done that research. Caught me off guard on that one. But anyway,
But
what do you think? What do you think's more compelling?
I don't know, and that's where it's because the argument's made that winning the Bassmasters Classic or winning Red Crest is like winning the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And winning Angler of the Year is just like having the best record throughout a football season or baseball season or whatever. But and I guess in the Classic and in Red Crest they took the top 40 or 50 or however many guys into that tournament. You had to beat those top guys. But so to me, hey, and everybody talks about the Bassmasters Classic. Like, that's what you hear about. Oh, he's the Bassmaster Classic champion, or he's Red Crest champion. But I also think there's some weight into Angler of the Year because you had to be competitive and be in the top all year long. Like, I know Jacob Wheeler, I think, had one finish this year outside the top 10.
Yeah.
So that's pretty impressive. And then what Brandon Polnick had to do on his side is impressive. So,
yeah,
I guess.
I think what it comes down to is I mean, to me, the Angler of the Year is a bigger deal from the standpoint that you did this all year. But I also think that in terms of the publicity and the attention and the fact that you're there at that sports show in front of all that media, I think that the winner of the championship events might get a little more notoriety.
Right.
But my baseball team is the Dodgers this year. They won 111 games, but they did not win the World Series.
Right.
Are we equating? Are we equating that Classic, that Red Crest, to the Super Bowl? Well, if that's the case, then you got to do that. But, gee, I don't know. I don't know if I can rule on this or not. I just think it to me, both of these things are so great. Now, I will tell you this: I finished second for the Angler of the Year in the Downey Bassmasters back in the 1980s at some point, mid 1980s. And I was heartbroken that I didn't win that. I didn't win a tournament during that season. I didn't win a single tournament, but I fished high enough that I was number 2. Big old trophy, but not as big a trophy as the guy that won first. So... they're both great accomplishments. They are absolutely
For sure.
both great accomplishments. I don't know. Do you have a ruling? I can't rule on this.
I can't. I mean, no.
You know why? Because to me, if you rule on one, then automatically it seems like the other is somewhat diminished. And the season
Right.
Brandon Polnick had this year, the season that Jacob Wheeler had this year, you should not take anything away from those guys. I mean, those were tremendous years.
Right.
So, yeah, I don't know that I can rule on that. Wow. I didn't know this was going to be so hard.
I didn't either. I mean, looking at it, I thought it was something we could rule on, but talking about it, I still, again, I'm right back where I'm at. I mean, even talking to you now, I make points, and then I make other points that, like I said, I'm leaning this way, and then I lean back this way. So I think they're both important. I think they're both awesome, and they're huge accomplishments. And I just think it just depends. I'm sure if you're a guy that's won 5 Angler of the Year titles but never won the Red Crest or Bassmasters Classic, you want to win that. If you're a guy that's won a Bassmasters Classic, or a Red Crest, you want to win Angler of the Year.
I'm gonna make sure that I come on when we come on next week, assuming we're not canceled here. I'm gonna make sure I come up with a list next week of those that have won Angler of the Year and championships. I think there might be 1 or 2 guys that have won Angler of the Year and Classic, and they've also won FLW Angler of the Year. And Luke Clausen, it might be Luke Clausen. I know he's won the Classic. I rode in his boat for the Classic. I was a media observer on day 2 when he won the Classic. That was amazing. And I know he won the Forest Wood Cup too, I believe. So he's won both. I think he's won some Angler of the Year awards. I have to check on that. Whew. All right. Making good progress. I guess it's to me now. Unless there was more to that you wanted to say.
No, because the only one on top of my head is I know Jordan Lee won, which granted he won Angler of the Year in MLF, and then he's won 2 Bassmasters Classics.
Yeah, that's right. That's another thing you could look at is see now a guy like Rick Clunn who's won 4 Classics. I mean, that is a different stratosphere, right? That's an alternative universe, right?
Yeah, it's impressive, for sure.
Yeah, it is. All right. Well, let's move on. The Bass qualifiers have replaced the Opens. I think they're still calling them the Opens, but I see a lot of BQ in the stuff that I'm reading. The BQs, the Bass qualifiers. Did Bass make the right decision to require anglers to fish all 9 of the Elite Series events? What say you?
At first, I didn't like it. I thought it was a terrible idea. But if you looked at obviously it's changed now, but when it was the Tackle Warehouse Pro Circuit, to qualify for the BPT, you had to fish all the events.
Right.
In order to score enough points to make it in.
Good point.
And I understand that, hey, if you only had to fish 3 tournaments, but it's not easy, especially these days, to make it in the world of bass fishing. I mean, you listen to all these anglers tell stories about just because you qualify for the elites doesn't mean all of a sudden you have $1 million checks rolling into your bank account where you can fund all this stuff. Right. So, again, if you can't make 9 tournaments, then or 7 tournaments or whatever, how are you going to fish an entire elite season?
I agree. You know, and gosh, I hope I don't hurt anybody's feelings, but, you know, when you're a bass commissioner, you're not going to make everybody happy. But the idea, and I mean, there's guys on the Elite Series right now that made it by fishing 3 opens, right?
Right.
And I don't want to take anything away from those guys because those guys, they fished the rules that were in front of them.
Exactly.
But I kind of think that the 9, I think it should be that. I think that's fair. I think it's fair. You know, you can can go back and forth about the strength of the Elite Series roster. I believe that it's getting stronger every year.
Yeah.
But I do think that by requiring anglers to fish all 9, that is how you're going to get the strongest roster.
I agree.
Okay.
Because
I mean, go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, I just you got to prepare people for what it's going to be like. And I know me right now, I can't afford to go drive around and fish 9 tournaments. So if I can't afford to do that right now, how am I going to afford that if I was on the Elite Series?
Right.
So learning how to travel and plan all this kind of stuff and, fishing. And again, nothing against anybody that only had to fish 3. If I was signed up and I fished 3 and was able to make it, I'd take it too. I'm not saying there are any less fishermen. And most, in my opinion, honestly, the guys that made it just fishing the 3, if you look at it, a lot of them won a division and were in the top in the overall anyway.
Yeah.
So if they fished all 9, they may have won, say, the Southerns. But if you look at the overall, they were up in the top of the overall division also.
Yeah.
So if they fished all 9. But so I don't really think you're hurting anything, and I just can't be mad at them for making them do it. And like I said, MLF was already making guys and gals do that too. So how's that any different?
Yeah. I had a thought right there, having a senior moment there. Well, I don't necessarily think that we need a resolution or a ruling on this because it is what it is, but it's a good discussion. And I know what I was going to say. They got 175 people signed up to fish all 9. Did you see that?
I saw that. That
is pretty damn impressive. I think that's pretty cool that they got 175 people. And back to your point, I don't know how anybody can afford to do that. It's just, I mean, if you have your own business and you have competent people that can run it for you, then maybe so. But I think about some of these really, really young anglers that are trying to do this. That's a lot of sleeping in your car and eating peanut butter sandwiches. That's tough.
Yeah, I mean, I know how to make it. Calls it a top ramen burrito, and I learned it from Brandon Polinick from when he used to sleep in the Tundra Suites, which is the back of his Toyota Tundra.
Right.
And he used ramen noodles, and he would go into McDonald's because he could get a cup of hot water for free, and he would make basically a burrito out of ramen noodles. And I've made it. Me and my kids have made it, actually. But they struggled, and it wasn't easy. And it was, like I said, it wasn't like they were staying in 5-star hotels. And you listen to some other podcasts, and these guys talk about some of the hotels that they've had to stay in that were sketchy, and they were worried their boats were going to get stolen and all this other stuff while they're there. It's a struggle to make it. So if you can't handle fishing 9 opens, you're not going to be able to handle fishing 9 Elite Series events or 7 BPT events or anything like that. I mean, it's not going to happen.
Yes. Hey, Off the Hook Jigs commented, most of them have their own businesses or are living on the road. Yeah, I think that's a pretty important point to make. I mean,
right.
I think to do this, you kind of have to set yourself up to be able to do it. You need to, I mean, it doesn't just happen with a snap of a finger. It's something that you need to kind of plan for, which is what I think the college system is a very cool thing, because I think that helps prepare younger anglers for this process. All right, well, good. I think it's to you now. Do you have another point for us?
Yeah, last one I got here is was MLF switching to the 5-fish format a good move for the right move?
Yeah, that's a good question. I loved and still do love the Every Fish Counts format. I think it is really, really cool. But I began thinking, God, what a cool format to have back in my Bass Club days. And then I began thinking, well, how in the world would we ever be able to do that in a bass club? I mean, I guess, the kayakers photograph them and so on. I guess maybe that would be a way to do it, but I think you got to have the technology. The thing that Major League Fishing has going for it that is unique to Major League Fishing, the thing that makes Major League Fishing what it is the score tracker. And there's still going to be a score tracker when you have a 5-fish limit or unlimited fish. So I guess to answer your question, I think it's fine that Major League Fishing has gone to the 5-fish limit. I think it's what fans want. I think the anglers were kind of either way, but I think they're happy with the 5. But what makes Major League Fishing is the score tracker. They still run that period thing that they do, the periods, and they still have the cut line. And the cut line to me is terribly compelling. I mean, there are, on day 2, the last period of day 2 of the qualifiers, that cut line is crazy. In the knockout round, that cut line is crazy. It's like you build up every time, and it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I agree with Off the Hook Jig. Score tracker was cool, and it was always entertaining. And every time I ever say that change, everybody hates change. And every time I've ever said that this change is going to be terrible, it turns out to be great. So this time I'm not going to do that. And I'm just going to give it a chance. But I felt like the every fish counts. I mean, even if a guy was 10 pounds out with 10 minutes to go, he wasn't out. If he caught 5 2-pounders or 2 5-pounders, he's back in. And that's where I worry. I understand the other side of that. Like, most people fishing tournaments are used to fishing 5-fish formats. And like you said, it's hard in your local bass club. How would you do an every fish counts format? I fished a tournament, and the only way I ever thought of they could do it was I had fished a tournament in a club, and we were it was on a slot lake. So instead of bringing in it's Fayette here, it's kind of like Fort. There's a slot.
Yeah.
So instead of bringing fish in, you basically measured them, and they had a sheet and each link equated to a certain weight, a predetermined weight that they came up with. Well, you drew for a partner, so that way, if you had a guy that always fished as a co-angler with you, y'all couldn't team up together and say, hey, we're going to win this tournament. We'll come first and second because we'll lie about our fish. So I was asked to come because they needed an extra person, and I got teamed up with a guy, and he caught a fish, and I had to verify the link. Like, he would measure it, and I would agree to the link. He would write it down, and I might have had to initial it, and then vice versa, he had to initial mine. So you could have done something like that in your local bass club and say, hey, okay, I agree, he caught a 3-pounder, write 3-pounder, initial it. But I know that's a lot of work versus just throwing 5 fish in the live well and culling some fish and everything else. I'm just curious to see this year. They still say the cut line drama is going to be there. I'm just curious to see if it's going to be there in the same capacity that it was with the every fish counts format. Because under every fish counts, like I said, 10 pounds, if I got a 25-pound sack and you got a 24-pound sack, or a 14-pound or 15-pound sack and I got a 25-pound sack, you got to catch a fish bigger than 10 pounds because
right.
You need, you know what I mean? Like, is if you take that 2-pounder out and throw it back in the water, well, now you need 12 pounds to even timing. Whereas in MLF with every fish counts, that's you start catching a bunch of little 2-pounders that are, hey, 2 pounds, start back to back to back, you're right back in it just like that.
Well, so, I would also say that if you're, we talked about this earlier, one of the things that's kind of tough to watch is these guys get offshore and they're just looking at their live screen and they're catching 2-pounder after 2-pounder. If they're in a 5-fish limit tournament, they're going to maybe have to head to the bank to do some frog fishing or something like that to try to get a bigger fish. I think it's going to be fine. I think we're going to get used to it, and I think a year from now, we're not even going to worry about it.
No, and I know they're keeping it. What is it? I think heavy hitters is still staying.
Yeah.
Every fish counts, and the team deal to be every fish counts. So that'd be cool. We're not getting rid of it completely. I think overall going back to the 5-fish is the right move, just because that's what everybody's used to. But I did like I just have to watch the team series.
Yeah.
But I did like the every fish counts because, like I said, we were working on a house up in Colorado for my, and I had my AirPods in. I was listening to the MLF tournament and building the metal barn up in Colorado. So it was just fun to listen to. If I couldn't watch, I would plug it in my phone and drive down the road in my truck. I'd have it flipped over, but I would just be listening to the commentary and everything else, just like I listen to a baseball game. So
absolutely.
And I do it with bass, but it was just always exciting. Like, oh, hey, he needs 3 more pounds, and if he catches, and then all of a sudden this guy comes screaming up from 38th place because he just caught an 8-pounder, and oh, now he's back in the mix. It was a lot of fun to watch. So
okay,
I don't think it's going to hurt anything.
Well, Patrick Schaefer, we have exhausted an hour at this point, or nearly an hour, and some good topics, some good conversation. We got 2 resolutions tonight, 2 binding rulings made by the commissioners that bass fishing must follow. Probably will ignore, but we did it. It's on record. And we have established, I think, that we are the voice of reason in this sport. Well, that was interesting. Some excellent discussions and a couple of rulings that will probably be ignored, probably will result in some people's feelings being hurt. But, when you're a commissioner, you can't make everybody happy. You just have to do what is right. If you have a subject we should pursue, drop us a comment on this video. Send us a DM on Instagram. Go to bass2anglerspodcast.com and send us an email. We want to hear from you. Until next time, be good to yourselves out there. Go catch some fish.